Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Pretty bad weekend, although it ended bittersweet last night when Ohio State lost. But the Steelers coming out flat, and it was more than flat. I mean, you have a veteran center, immediately snapped the ball over his head. I knew it was going to be trouble. It reminded me of that Peyton Manning Super Bowl when the Broncos played the Seahawks and they got a safety immediately, if you remember that. And then it was just an epic beatdown. Pretty much the definition of the Broncos in the Super Bowl. They have some of the worst losses that come to mind. So if you're old, you might be confused, but it was the most recent beatdown when they came out flat like that. But Steelers, I don't even know what to say, because I would think that it's on the coaching staff, not just the players. And Ben played awful, but I'm going to get into that here in a little bit because when we get into his retirement talk. But some of the coaching stuff, because there's a lot of coaching changes going on right now. I mean, the Eagles fired Doug Peterson, and everyone keeps talking about how, they can't fire Mike Tomlin. He won a Super Bowl over a decade ago now. The Eagles just won one 3 years ago, and they're firing their coach. So I'm not saying that Tomlin should go, but some of the coaching decisions, not putting a stop on it at the beginning of the game, which I think maybe he's riding Ben, and I think they're relying on Ben a little too much, which is what the issue is. And it's going to be, for me, I think it's going to be a long rebuild. It's not going to be a quick turnaround for the Steelers. But before I continue, what are your thoughts on the game?
It was bad. I mean, but the ironic thing was, for as bad as that game started, I thought the more that the Cleveland was scoring and the more that they got up, the more I thought, you know what? They're gonna somehow find a way to get back into this game. And I mean, when you look at what the final score ended up being, your initial reaction isn't, Steelers got curb stomped. It was like you saw a high-scoring final. Cleveland obviously won. But it was like, if you didn't watch the game at all, you would have thought, it must have been just a shootout. And, Ben played the way that he normally does. He has some good plays. He has some touchdown passes, but he also has some turnovers that cost him. There's nothing that he did that, good, bad, or otherwise, that moves a needle. Like you take games like that he does, because let's face it, that's the way he's played his whole career. Everything's been like that. So why be surprised that he throws multiple picks and multiple touchdowns? Like, that's just how he plays.
I know he had 47 completions. I think they said it was a record. I don't know if it was for him or if it was overall or what. But they were talking about how, if you told Ben that they were going to score 37 points, they'd be excited. They think they'd win the game. But I'm like, you don't know. Did you tell me he also had 4 interceptions? I think that was the big turning point, and that's why I wanted them to settle down, because they had the big fumble. So what they have, 5 turnovers total, I think. I'll double check here quick. Yeah, 5 turnovers, the fumble on the first snap, 2 interceptions that were tipped. I thought Ben was inaccurate a good part of the game, because I had some people come after me saying, 2 of those weren't his fault. They were on the receivers. I understand that the receiver tipped the ball. And, I mean, you can talk about the receiving core and the drops they've had all year. But I still think that Ben, if he was a little bit more accurate in the game, then they wouldn't have had that. I think the one that stood out to me, there was like a 4th down or something, and he just overthrew Ebron, and he was wide open. And I thought, what are you doing at this point? And that was when, in the middle of their comeback, I think they ended up punting. I'd have to go back through, because I might be getting mixed up, because the other thing, so I don't forget to talk about it, is the clock management. The Steelers, like you said, if you turned it on at halftime, you would have thought, the Steelers are coming back. because they had the momentum there at the end of the third quarter. It's like a 4th and 1 at around midfield. They should have went for it. I know you don't have a running game, but come on. And early in the game, why are you running Derek Watt? That was such a Jim Harbaugh move that I immediately had Michigan flashbacks of poor coaching. Because you take a guy that never carries the ball and you're going to put him in a critical 4th and 1. And they did it twice. The first time he got it, and it might have been a 3rd and 1. The second one, he got stuffed. And I thought, what are you doing? Like, it's not like he's been carrying the ball. I know you have trouble running the ball. If you're going to put him in there, have him block. Like, I just couldn't understand why they would do that. I mean, there's no reason to put primarily like a journeyman. What is even his regular position?
I think that's the role he is. He's a fullback.
He's the fullback? I honestly, I'm going to have to look that up because I was so baffled. Like, why are you giving him the ball if he's in there to block? Because they barely use him. Like, he can't see the field that much. I know he's primarily like a special teams player. That's why I didn't know. Yeah, he is listed as the fullback. But it's almost like he's been on the team for so long. I almost wonder if he even has a stats page on how many carries that he had. Because he barely touches it, and to be getting the ball in the playoffs, to me, was just mind-boggling. And I was just wondering, like, what at this point are you doing? And, I mean, he almost broke his neck a couple weeks ago. So, even on his profile doesn't even have stats, Matt. It has situational stats.
Well, I swear that I thought the commentator said that it was his first carry of the season.
Matt, I'm pretty sure it is. That's why I had to double check because I would have felt like an idiot if I looked this up and he had like 100 carries. But I knew he didn't have any. He had, and this is, I'm looking to see if this even goes back. He's been on the team since like 2016. All right, here we go. Like that's the first carry. So last year he had 7 carries. The year before, 4. What about the next year? Because he's been on the team. So the year before that, 6. And then before that, 2. He's never had like 10 carries in a season. And then they fed him twice in this game. And so he had 2 attempts for 2 yards.
It was like Pittsburgh forgot their identity. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're a smash mouth run team.
Well, that's the other thing that annoys me. Because I read some Browns articles because I like to get both sides before we do the show. And they were talking about how the Browns now have the Steelers' identity and like they're a hard-hitting defensive team. They gave up 37 points. And the quarterback threw 4 interceptions and still scored 37 points on you. Like, you're not a strong defensive team. Like, what are you talking about? He passed for 500 yards. Like, if I don't understand, like, if that's what you're going for, I understand you're excited that you got the win. Like, I honestly didn't think the Browns had a chance. And even, like you said in the third, it looked like Ben was going to will them back in. I mean, that was the decision. It was late in the third, and they had already started chasing points, which annoyed me because they went for it on 4th down. I thought they should have kicked the field goal because I thought they had momentum, and I thought, look, you're down so many scores. If you kick the field goal there, get a couple 2-point conversions, then you're right in it. But at least you're chipping down how many possessions that you need. They go for it. Okay, bold move. They get the touchdown. I think they went for 2 the first time. They got it. Then they let the Browns, after the next time they got the ball back, they should have went for it again on 4th down. Like, you already went for it. You already went for 2. Just go for it. And then it would have been, I mean, the game would have been close. It would either been a 1 or 2 score game at that point if they would have went for 2. Instead, they let the Browns score, get the ball back. They don't go for 2 again, which added an extra possession. Because if they would have went for 2, they would have been down enough to go for 2 again and then only need that field goal. But instead, they didn't. So it messed the whole thing up. They would have had to get 2 touchdowns in. And I knew it was over. Like, when you start making coaching mistakes like that, that's what I said. You want to try to minimize it. Because even if it's in the end of the game situation, and I know that they talked about the chances of getting an onside kick right now are 7% or something. But the Steelers lost by 11. If they would have went for 2 that other time, they would have only been down 10. It's much easier to get a field goal than 2 touchdowns. I don't understand why he didn't go for 2 the second time. And that's 100% on the coaching staff, because even the commentators, they did a double take. And he said, I didn't even think about it because I thought he was just following the card. You know how they always say that? I forget who was doing the game, but they talked about it. He said, I didn't do the math until right now because I just assumed he would have made the right decision, but he should have went for 2. And I had already texted you, like, I should have went for 2. What's he doing? Like, the math doesn't even add up. You just need one guy to sit there and just crunch the numbers. Like, come on, Steelers, call me up. I'll tell you, 5 turnovers, bad. You'll lose the game if you have 5 turnovers.
You will, especially as soon as the first one happened, I was like, oh, that's trouble.
And then
if you're giving points away immediately, the statistics are absolutely insane. If you score a defensive touchdown, like the percentage that you have of winning the game increases, like, don't quote me on this, but it's something like 80% higher.
Yeah, and with that, they were not stopping the run. Like, I know the Steelers had weakness in the linebacking core because of injuries and stuff, but when they needed to, like, stuff the box. Make Baker Mayfield beat you. He was beating them with just checkdowns. Like, stuff the box, play short, make them beat you long. Like, I would have rather have given up a long pass and said, like, all right, great throw, whenever they needed to stop, instead of, oh, here's an 8-yard run followed by a 3 or maybe like a 1-yard run, and then he's going to hit like the tight end on a 1-yard out to get the first down. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, Landry at that one point, he was just running crossing routes, and they couldn't stop him. So that's why I don't want to say it's a changing of the guard. I'm cool if they stick with Tomlin. I know a couple Steelers fans that I talked to about the game. They're ready to fire him. And the only reason I say that maybe you make that move is if Ben retires and you want to start fresh. But I think he could guide you through a rebuild. And then if you're not getting it done, then go for it. And I know I talked about the Eagles. To me, I think that was like a front office type deal. I don't think that he wanted to keep Wentz. They put Wentz on a big-time contract. It leaked out that Wentz wasn't a good locker room player. Who do you think that leaks out from? Probably coaches or other people that are close to the program. So I doubt the owners like that coming out. And then the Eagles have a historically bad year. That's not historic. It's not like they're the Lions or anything. But they had a chance they could have won that division because the division was historically bad. And instead, they fell on their face. I really don't think it's on the coach. When you're getting shoved to put certain quarterbacks in that you might not fit your system, it just doesn't make sense to me. And then you have Jalen Hurts, which I think Hurts would have fit well in his system, and that's why I'm surprised why they didn't give him more time. It's almost like they knew Peterson was going to go for Hurts, and they're still connected to Wentz, and so they were like, no, we can't have this, because he runs more of a spread type offense that Hurts would be perfect for. And so it just doesn't make sense for them to fire him unless they're going to keep pushing for Wentz. That's what I'm thinking. I would be shocked if they pushed him around or whatever. I think they fired him so that they could rebuild around Wentz. And to me, that's mind-boggling because I think that's a bad move. What are your thoughts on that?
I got mixed feelings. I mean, I don't understand. I don't think Wentz is a terrible quarterback, but I don't understand where the drop off is with his performance. And is it that he just doesn't have the confidence of his team, and that they want to go they feel more confident with Hurts or whatever? I think he's a viable quarterback and could do well given the right circumstances. I think when you're the coach, I think a lot of times what you see in the NFL and the Washington football team's been historically one of those teams that they go out and just get whoever the biggest free agent names are, and then it's like, well, why didn't this work? Well, you signed a guy that really didn't deserve it to a max contract, like these veteran guys to these really high deals, and then there's no incentive for them to perform. And I think there needs to be some level of the front office and the coaching staff being on the same page as far as like who's playing and like what they're looking to do. Because if the owners are like, the management's thinking, oh, we want to run this like high scoring offense, but the coach is thinking ball control, then you get the cluster that you're dealing with.
That's why, I'm just trying to think what they could build around him with. Because my thing is, I think what hurts him the most is just accuracy. Like, I don't know if it's too much of the locker room thing. I think that came out because the team probably rallied around Nick Foles. They won a Super Bowl. Everyone was congratulating Wentz like he won it. And it was confusing because like the media was like dubbing him as the next big thing. And then the next year, of course, you fall on your face. You're 5-6. It's not like his touchdown to interception ratio is bad, but like Ben's throwing more touchdowns than him, and he's also throwing 5 interceptions in the same game. Like Wentz isn't scoring. I mean, he might not be throwing the interceptions, but to me, if you're looking at it, he's more of like a ball control quarterback. But if you're not accurate, if you're only hitting 50% of your throws, then you're going to go 3-8 and 1 or whatever. So there's been a drop off. His high year in percentage was the year after the Super Bowl when they had an awful record, because I think he was just checking the ball down. Like, he wasn't actually scoring. He plays right into defense's hands. And when you're not scoring that many touchdowns, it's a clear drop. Like this year, he only threw for 16 touchdowns. I know he played 12 games, but it's not like a big drop off in terms of completions. Like, he had 251 completions. You would hope that he would have gotten a few more touchdowns out of that, but they're not scoring. Then, he fumbles, double-digit fumbles. To me, it's just like you're building around a quarterback that I think should just be a career backup at this point. He has the talent, but there are a lot of guys that come into the league that have the talent that it's just to build around them, to me, is crazy. And even whenever you watch the Eagles this year, their offense looked stagnant until Hurts came in. Like, he was giving them another element. And so it's almost like they were like, look, our offense is good whenever we have that spread, but we need a new offense that's built around the traditional quarterback. And we'll see if it pays off for him. Because the key to a lot of the guys that stuck around forever, Ben, Brees, Rivers, they're accurate. Tom Brady, like, they're accurate. And I don't see that with Wentz.
Well, I think, one of the things, like when you're looking at what Pittsburgh did, is that there was always, in the past, there's been the threat of Roethlisberger scrambling. Like, I'm not going to say he's Lamar Jackson, but he would do just enough with his legs to keep defenses honest, so that when he would start running around, it would get guys open more, because they had to respect that if they didn't bring enough on the pass rush, that he would just take off and scramble for 5-6 yards and keep ahead of the sticks. And I think that's something to be said, that if you can do that consistently, then especially in the NFL, you have a really good chance, because like what separates the teams that are now in the playoffs and the teams that aren't, like watching the first game on Saturday, the Buffalo Indy game. Like, did you watch that at all? It was like throw to the backfield, check down. It was just like both sides were just throwing check downs and swing passes, and it was run after catch.
Well, yeah, but like I said, you still got to be accurate doing that kind of stuff. Because if you're not able to take shots downfield and they don't respect that, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just going to be a team where they're going to key up on that, and then it's gone. Look at the Steelers last year. Couldn't run, couldn't really throw deep. What could they do? they were trying to do that same offense. Didn't really work.
Well, I mean, the other part to it is you have to have some level of run game. Whether, like, you look at Baltimore, and I don't know that Lamar Jackson's setting the world on fire throwing downfield, but as soon as he tucks the ball and takes off running, there's that extra level of holding the defense accountable. That if they don't respect where he's at or following where he's at, then he takes off and runs for a 50-yard touchdown. So there's that third element. You have your short passing game. If you can have that quarterback run, or like in the Steelers case, if you can get a ground game going, then it opens it up that when everyone starts creeping too close, the shots downfield are wide open. And they haven't been able to get as many shots downfield because they don't have any kind of ground game, and they put them into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and Roethlisberger isn't scrambling at this point, so they put themselves in predictable situations, and that's really what hurts them.
Yeah, that's where. I mean, with Ben, like, what do you think? Do you think he's going to retire next year, or this year? I guess.
Honestly, I don't know that he retires, but I think he should. And just like I think he'll probably be back, it'll be a late decision. He'll ponder it, but overall, he wasn't as banged up as he has been. So I think he'll come back. Just like I think when you look at what Tomlin's doing, I think he should be on the hot seat. Now, the people in support of him are going to say, well, he's always made the playoffs and he's never had a losing record, but Pittsburgh isn't the Detroit Lions. Like, it's at some point, do you raise the bar in Pittsburgh? Do you hold them accountable? It's like they're like stuck on average, and I don't know if that's good enough.
That's where I think that they're going to push. And I mean, if he wants to stay around one more time, like I said, that's fine. But you're going to have to get another quarterback. Like, I don't think Rudolph is the answer. So. And, I mean, if he wanted a chance to be the answer, like, Ben would have to step away. I think the longer Ben stays, the less of a chance Rudolph has. Like, he's not going to get meaningful reps. We've seen what he is. He's had a chance last year. He didn't capitalize on it. I think if he would have capitalized on it, Ben might not have come back. But it was clear that Ben needed him, or that they needed Ben, so he comes out. They go undefeated for the first half. Then the chinks start showing. They can't run the ball, everything else. So, I don't know. It's like at the decision, all Ben is doing is just keeping them mediocre until he retires, or they get a run game so he doesn't have to turn the ball over.
But I'm not even going to say that it's Ben holding him back. I think it's a reflection of like the play calling that's been stale since Todd Haley was the offensive coordinator. I mean, realistically, you're looking at the exact same scheme since Bruce Arians was there. Like, but it's been.
You're also seeing like high turnover of skill players and other guys. Like, you had studs with Ben. I know there were locker room issues, but you could have kept them. You could have kept the killer bees together. Like, what's the difference? Ben's taking a pay cut. If he would have had like Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, maybe they don't have all the turnovers this year. Maybe they go undefeated. Who knows? Because at that point, you could have traded Juju. You could have traded like some of the other guys if you kept your studs. But, and I know some of the teams in the playoffs don't really have that. But I don't know. I think if you're leaning on a veteran quarterback, you're taking his best weapons away and kind of blaming him, saying like, oh yeah, you should have had better control of the locker room or set a better example, Ben. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, you should have. And then that's it.
But I feel like it's like there's always been talk, like with Bell and Brown. I mean, it's been since the whole Super Bowl group with Hines Ward and Polamalu left. and Harrison left, that they've said about there being locker room and leadership issues. And it was like the initial issue was the cancers of Bell and Brown. And so it was like, well, once we get rid of them, then we're fine. Well, now, you look at what's been done on social media, and you have Claypool running his mouth, and you have Juju doing like all of his other stuff. Like, are we how much further ahead are we? Because you had Claypool that goes online and is like, well, it doesn't matter. Cleveland's just going to get beat by the Chiefs next week anyhow. Like, you got whipped. Just take it. You don't need to be online adding fuel to the fire.
I know, because that's the one thing where just be humble. Like some of the guys, like it's almost like, and maybe it is a Tomlin thing at the top, where he's just not teaching these guys to just be quiet. Because like that's almost like when Randy Moss went to New England, immediately he had no issues. And everyone was like, well, how do you silence Randy Moss? And it's like, no, he just knew that they wouldn't play him. Like there's no fear. Like Juju knows he's not getting benched. I hope the Steelers don't re-sign him. He said that he hopes he comes back. I just don't get the headaches. Like I would just rather get a guy that's quiet, not drawing attention, and talk trash to the other team at the game. Like leave the social media at home. It's such a weird thing. Like I knew we grew up before social media hit, actually like probably right in the midst of it. But it wasn't like you were talking trash on social media to like your opponent like they do now. Like just talk to him at the game like Larry Bird would do or Michael Jordan and then get in their ear. And then after the game, you just give them a pat and then that's it. You're gone. Like it's not like LeBron's like hugging on the opponents, crying on them. It's like, what are you doing? He's battled that guy. You're like hanging out with them, having an ice cream after the game. It's like, I don't know. It's like different times. So now instead of like you're hanging out taking selfies with the guys, and then after you go home and you like tweet a nasty message to them, it's like such a teenage drama thing.
It turned into Mean Girls.
Yeah, I don't get it. So I know they're totally not going to get rid of it, but it seems like some teams, and maybe I'm just not aware of it. But I mean, I check social media just to get tidbits for the show, and I see a lot of it from some teams, but not so much from other teams. So maybe it's just a team policy thing. And like, if I was in charge, I would just have a class or like just help out with the front office and teach these guys like, yo, instead of drawing negative attention to yourself, like, you could just be running ads all day. Like here I am at the tire shop. They sell great tires here. I'm just taking a picture, getting an extra paycheck. That's why whenever colleges start to be able to pay players, I know that the NCAA asked for a hold off on that because I think we brought it up in the final bell a few weeks ago. Like Michigan passed it, the state of Michigan, and then Florida, and there was like one or two other ones that passed it that it's supposed to kick in like a couple of years. Could you imagine if you were signing and you just took a marketing class where your job was to just go get ads and like make money for yourself? Because that could happen. And it's almost like an unpaid internship, except you were getting paid. Because I saw someone complaining about it, and I might as well talk about this now before we get into the playoff stuff, because I'll forget when we get to the college football. But they were saying that it's not going to make a big deal for programs when they start paying players because they're only going to pay for the studs. They're not going to pay for like linemen or whatever. And I just thought, like, you're nuts. Have you seen like the Coach O car commercials where he's like at the dealership, like telling them that he's buying a car? There's a ton of small businesses around every college that they would love it if they were just paying guys like, oh, here's $100. You want to do like a little radio ad or a TV ad with me? And you're going to see all kind of corny ads. I'm telling you, Matt, where these players are getting paid. It might not be much. Like they're not going to get paid millions, but I think people are overlooking where if you're going to go to a school that has that type of infrastructure and has that type of pull, like, oh, you can go to Michigan. We're going to have 100 different businesses in Detroit come down and they're just going to run ads. Because not every business is going to have millions of dollars to throw at some of these guys. some of them are going to be like, yeah, we'll take a tight end. Like, who do you got for $1,000? And there be 80 kids lined up saying, I'll take that. Like, they're not going to say no, Matt. So, and that's why I think it's only going to get worse in the NFL. That's how I'm connecting this, because once they start paying and getting paid for that, you're going to see even weirder ads, weird things come through, like just TV infomercials, ShamWow, My Pillow, whatever those things are that are on late night. That's what you're going to see your team. As long as they don't do what the NBA is talking about, where they're putting like team logos on, like major soccer across in Europe or whatever. Because that's the one thing that I think when you turn your car or your uniform into like a NASCAR with just ads everywhere, that's a little ridiculous. So I hope football never gets to that point. But you got any opinions on that?
I think that you have to have some kind of policy in place where, as long as it's not like you look at Juju doing his TikTok videos and stuff, like when they were winning, when they were on their 11-0 win streak, like nobody cared. But as soon as like the wheels started falling off, it was like I think they have to understand, or at least have some sense of like when it's okay and when you're winning, if you're backing it up, that's one thing. But then like when you come off like with the way Claypool did, it was like you come off like you're just pouting. Like that's not a good look.
And that's where it's not even just that. Like I think it's just across, not even just like just for social media and stuff. It's like a tasteful thing. Like you got to switch it. Like, hey, we're dancing, we're having fun, we're winning. Oh, we lost? Here's a TikTok where I'm getting back to work. And I brought up T.O. before, like he was telling teams like, I'm working hard, come look at me. And he's doing sit-ups or push-ups in his driveway without his shirt on. Like that's the kind of thing where these young players, they're not turning the switch. So on the outside, everyone's just seeing them like, why is this guy doing a goofy dance when they just got their ass kicked?
Well, did you see they had the video of Juju like doing some dance like before a play?
I've seen a bunch of stuff that he's done. That's why I just want him gone. Like, and I actually thought about this, and I have some notes here because we talk about Johnson and all the drop passes he's had. But remember a guy that dropped a lot of passes that annoyed me for the Packers? Davante Adams, Matt? He is an absolute stud now. If the Packers would have gave up on him and been like, oh yeah, that guy, garbage. Look at all the drop passes he's doing. Like we know he's getting open, but he's just not able to put it all together. Deontay Johnson's only 24 years old. So if he's able to just put it together for a few more years, and I'm not saying that, he's going to immediately be like Davante Adams, but Davante Adams, he's 28 now. So it took him, this was his breakout year for real. So it took him like 4 or 5 years. I don't know how many years ago I had him on my fantasy team. 3, 4. It's probably around the same time. Tons of drops. That's how I view Deontay Johnson. Scoring some points, getting open. He seems like he's open a good bit. I think he was one of the ones that tipped one of the balls. I could be mistaken. But that's the kind of guy where I think, like, all right, I haven't seen a lot of drama from him. Why don't the Steelers just focus on him? Get him some help. And I think that they could just get rid of Juju and go for like a bigger possession-type Plexico Burress receiver that would mesh well with Johnson. And I think that I don't think you would see a drop-off at all as long as Washington was still in the mix. I mean,
you know, it's funny that you bring up Davante Adams because I was just thinking about that like for as good of a season as he has, is that a 1-year fluke with where he's at? Because we've joked about it for years that like he's fantasy trade bait. Like he always ends up going in our league for like a really high amount, and then he always ends up dropping like a pile of passes and hurting whoever takes him.
I told you, whatever the game that was a couple years ago where I just needed one catch and he had 3 balls thrown at him at the end of the game. And I think he dropped one. The one was like he didn't even try for it. And then the other one, I don't know if it counted as a drop, but it was like kind of high. And I thought, oh my God, I'm never dropping this guy again. Like, you can't catch a ball. That's how I think some people are like, Johnson, are you serious? You tipped another interception ball? Like, what are you doing? And so, but I'm thinking, maybe he's coming around. Maybe the ball's getting to him a little too quick yet. It is still a jump up. I don't know. Maybe it is a fluke. But the one thing that is key is Aaron Rodgers trusts him. If you watch the game, he's going to him, and he's doing it like in coverage and like a bunch of other stuff that you know that, okay, he's getting the big time push. And if you remember, he's from Fresno State. So he wasn't a big time guy coming in with like a big time quarterback throwing to him. So whenever he got there, it took him a while for him to get up to the NFL speed. And maybe he does have staying power. I don't know. Because that's the one thing that like Deontay Johnson comes from Toledo. So similar. Where I think it's easier to take a D1 jump than it is a lower jump. And I'm not saying that, I mean, they're just non-Power 5. It's not like they're coming from Division 2. But some of those guys, they're successful because they know how to get open. They're good whenever the pressure's on them because at some of the points, they might be the guy on the team. So they know how to take over a game. Once the NFL's caught up, let's see if it happens. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he went on a 4-year run where he was awesome. And that goes for Devontae Adams. Deontay Johnson, I'm hoping, follows that same pattern. He's not there yet. He can get open. I mean, they have him for cheap. That's the kind of guy I would try to build around. Just stay out of trouble. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, Adams was never really in trouble or anything. Let's keep that going and see if he comes. But isn't he playing? Are they playing Ramsey this week? I think that's who he's matched up against.
Yeah.
So this will be a must-see for him. Because you can look awesome during the regular season and disappear in the playoffs, and then people will forget about you. Unless they're playing fantasy football. But this will be key for him. If he shows out this weekend, then I think he's the real deal, and he'll be around for a while. Tom Brady, Drew Brees. 2 beatdowns in favor of Drew Brees, Matt. Who do you got this week in the game?
Oh, I don't know.
It's a key game. They put it on Sunday night.
Did they put it on the History Channel for all the ancient quarterbacks?
Half the quarterbacks in the playoffs still are ancient. Not really, actually. They're all pretty young, except for these two. Unless you throw Aaron Rodgers in there. But most of them are on the younger side. My boy Phillip Rivers almost got the upset, by the way. That would have been big, and it wouldn't have mattered in the end because the Steelers lost. But we'll get to that game in a second. But speaking of like old quarterbacks, this is the game where if Drew Brees wants to be on that upper level, he has to win. The Buccaneers defense does not look good.
The Bucs D doesn't look good, but I'll say this. I do think that Tampa has a shot, like a legitimate shot, with the addition of Brown and knowing now that he's not facing any criminal charges, in addition to Gronk and Evans and Godwin. Like, there's a lot of weapons there that he's never had before. And I mean, I think the only comparable year you could use for Brady was the year that they had Randy Moss and like went undefeated, losing to the Giants.
And I wonder, do they have those guys for 2 years, or is this just a 1-year deal? I don't know I can't remember how many years they went in on everybody. Because like if they were to lose and Brady comes back, like they could pick this up and then make a dangerous threat. Remember, they don't really have the chemistry right now. There were flashes of it. Like Brown had that big touchdown. And then I said, like, wouldn't it be crazy if Brown scored the game-winning like Super Bowl touchdown? How mad Steelers fans would be. Like, you got to be kidding me. Antonio Brown's a jerk. Like, everyone would be going out against him. And then Tom Brady's like hugging him. and then everyone would hate Tom Brady more, even though I love Tom Brady. So,
what's wrong with you?
Tom Brady, Matt, I have so much love for him, but I'm going to have to go with the Saints this week. That's my pick. I just think the Buccaneers defense looked so bad. And I mean, the Washington guy played great from the XFL. He got hurt. I thought he broke his collarbone. The way he was holding his arm, I thought, oh, here we go. Who are they going to put in after him? Because Alex Smith had an unknown injury, which I was hoping that if they were to pull off the upset, we'd see an Alex Smith redemption tour in the playoffs, but I don't even know if he would have played. Because you come back, why would you not play through injury? That could have been your last year. Like, how bad could your leg injury have been? I don't know. Saints are my pick. Did you make your pick?
For as much as I want to see the Saints, I think it's going to be Tampa.
Oh, I still think the defense is the key. I think it'll be a shootout. Like the Saints have been scoring, 30-something on them? Maybe not both games, but Tampa Bay hasn't really been scoring. I think Tampa Bay's offense is coming together. They still don't have the pure chemistry yet. The dangerous thing would be if they click even more this week and then the following week, by the Super Bowl, they might be operating on all cylinders. And it might not matter if the defense shows up. But like if they were playing a high-scoring team like the Chiefs, like look out, that would be one exciting game. But speaking of the Chiefs and the Browns, who do you have?
Well, we're gonna go with the upset here. Go with Cleveland.
Oh, looks like I'm gonna stick with the favorites. I got the Chiefs.
They got the LeBrons on their back.
But the Browns, they came out, everything went right with them, and they still had a chance to lose. Like they had no momentum at the end of the third quarter. It took the awful decisions by Mike Tomlin to let them get another touchdown and pretty much put the game away. So I don't think the Chiefs are going to have that issue. I don't know if it will be a blowout, but I just don't know if the Browns are going to be able to score enough. So that's my pick. Chiefs and Saints on Sunday. On the Saturday games, I'm going backwards for some reason. Ravens at the Bills.
Bills, Mafia.
They play bad, though. They play bad. Lamar Jackson got the monkey off his back, Matt.
But I think Frank Reich's a good coach, too, with what he's dealing with with what he has in Indy. That old Phillip Rivers.
That's true.
I think they schemed well, and I think with Buffalo still not really, they didn't play the best game and still managed to win. I think the fans are going to get them over the top.
I don't know. It was crappy to see the Steelers not really have any fans. And then, some of the other games are just rocking.
Well, that's why I love the fact. Like, I want to see Buffalo win the Super Bowl. Because the governor was going to show up at the game, and the Bills fans were like, no, stay home and work on the budget. And they got a petition, and he didn't go to the game. Like, he said, oh, I got to stay and get everything in line to open up our economy for the people of New York. They're like, you kept everyone out all year, and now you're going to try to come to the game. No, you need to give your seat. You need to do the right thing and give your seat up to some of the season ticket holders who are affected by coronavirus.
I mean, I'm not against the Bills, but I think the Ravens win this. I think they're getting back to where they were, and the defense looked pretty good. And just because the Bills just didn't look good, I know Josh Allen is still young, but he has to be more consistent. Like, he can't just be checking down the whole game. Like, what's he doing? Got to take some shots, and he didn't look like he felt comfortable doing it. The only thing that could be a wild card for me in this is if it snows heavily, I don't think the Ravens have a chance. And so that means it will snow heavily, and the Ravens will blow them out by like 24. Like Lamar Jackson will just run wild or something, and people will be like, what are you talking about? They don't need to rely on the pass, but that's the one thing. It is supposed to snow, but I'm sticking with my original pick. I got the Ravens in this one, and then the last one, Rams at the Packers. What do you think?
I'm actually going to go Rams here.
Dang it, I was too.
Just
go ahead.
I like the way their defense played, and I think having Ramsey out there. I liked how everyone was so surprised at how well Cam Akers did. Did they not watch where he ran behind a Florida State offensive line that was basically made of paper mache? He was just running behind mannequins and stick figures. Like, he's doing it by himself for like 4 years now.
I'm going to go with the opposite reason. I think Goff, coming in with an injury, he wasn't even playing. Then the other guy gets injured, and he's like, all right, I guess I have to play. And he came in and dominated. The Seahawks, how many times are they going to collapse now? I thought this year was going to be different.
Well, they did fire Schottenheimer today.
Who cares? Like, you can't have Russell Wilson clicking, and then everyone catches up to you, and then you're like, no, do we need to make adjustments? Like, no. Like, we're good. And then that's like what the Steelers did. It was like the exact same. And like they're like, you know what? We don't want adjustments. We were undefeated, remember? Who cares if we lost a bunch of games in a row? Like, that doesn't matter. And it wasn't even like, I mean, his QBR wasn't even high. But just Goff comes in injured, and he moves the ball just enough. K-Makers runs wild, and they kind of just had a lead and just sat on it.
Well, I'm hoping that they don't have to rely on Goff this week, because if they do, then I might have to flip my pick around. But I think like Goff came in injured and was able to manage the game enough. Like you could tell that he was visibly not right. And then the offensive line just kept getting pressure, and he just kept getting drilled over and over. It's like he's gonna end up like breaking his hand off.
Yeah, but he played tough, and that's what I like to see. And so you're up against Aaron Rodgers, and you're right. We don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to show up. It could be the playoff bomb. It could be the regular season hero, because even Peyton Manning had some great playoff games before they would choke. So we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, if it's high scoring, they're done. But I'm thinking that the defense is going to set the tone, and he's going to do just enough. People will be like, oh, we got him dead to rights. He's hurt. He'll get the ball out, maybe a screen. Akers will take it for a touchdown, and everyone will just be going crazy. So those are my picks. You got anything else for the playoffs?
No.
All right, getting into college. I know I talked about this a little bit earlier. Continuing my other talk about how people were like, oh, paying players isn't going to break the Alabama dynasty because of whatever. Let me just read to you what Jim Harbaugh's title is, Matt. It's the J. Ira and Nikki Harris family head football coach, Jim Harbaugh. So every time he goes on TV, they don't say Michigan head football coach. That's what they read. And guess what? He's not the only coach that has a crazy title. You have Sanford Robinson offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis. You also have Donald C. Graham, football offensive line coach. They have a scholarship or an endowment for the offensive line. Maybe that's what Florida State needs. Maybe if you have that type of money coming into your program, people will just be able to get paid with ads. Mm-hmm. You're naming the offensive line coach. How many times do they even mention that on TV? Probably zero. They never bring up the offensive line in the college football game. So, Alabama, I think right now, Nick Saban, untouchable. He has the record now for the most national titles by head coach. They kept saying during the game, well, he had that one at LSU. I don't know why they kept bringing it up. Like, just say he had 7. I know they weren't all at Alabama. Maybe they just didn't want to talk about Bama all night. But he's almost 70. He's 69 years old. I don't know how much longer he can do it. So, the
best comment that I saw on the internet was that Saban has Alabama at a point where when you're playing NCAA, your team is so good that like playing the game isn't fun anymore, and you restart with Wyoming.
I saw that same thing.
It's like that's very accurate, because when you look at what the weapons that they had, and it was like just absolutely insane.
Matt, did you see their list of that class? Michigan was so close to getting like 2 or 3 of those guys. Their running back even enrolled at Michigan. He was like an early enrollee. He had a roommate and everything. And then he didn't show up. He just didn't show up.
Well, he got that car deal at Alabama.
Yeah, Najee, they're just like, hey, calm down. And the plane, there was 2 plane trackers. I remember people were like going crazy on Twitter, like, which plane is he on? Is he the one going to Alabama, or is he at the one going to Michigan? And then, of course, he wasn't on the Michigan one. So, I mean, that's a bunch of close misses from Harbaugh. So, people that are against him, and I might as well talk about Harbaugh now, he took an awful deal. If you're a coach from him, and I'm wondering if he just didn't get any other NFL offers, because he waited long enough, Matt. Like, he would have known if they were serious in hiring him. He's such a successful head coach in the NFL, though.
I'm going to argue that because I think to coach in the NFL with what it looks like Peterson went through, you can't just go in there half cocked to an NFL deal, and you got to have some level of control with the owners or the players, or there has to be something there that's going to entice you. Because going into the NFL, you got, and just like with any Power 5 now, you got 4 years or less to get it done. And if you don't make a deep run like Super Bowl, national championship playoffs, like deep playoff runs, you're going to get canned.
Well, I'm saying just in terms of his, like, just getting an offer or whatever, it's almost like he could have had one, and if he didn't, it's just because like other teams weren't serious with him. Because I'm looking up, if you hear the clicking, that's my search thing here. But Harbaugh has one of the top winning percentages of all time in the NFL. So if he wants, I was trying to see if they had like his actual one, but he's like 1 game under the limit to make the rule book apparently, or 1 or 2 games. He's just under the cut. But you don't take a coach like that and then not give him control. So to me, I thought that if he wanted the job, he would be out. So then I don't know. Maybe he is hell-bent on getting Michigan back, because he took basically a half salary cut. He was like the number 1 paid coach in the Big Ten. He's now 8th, I think I told you. He went from $8 million to $4 million. And he'll make it back if he wins the national title. He'll get back to his $8 million if he wins the national title, Matt. It's like an incentive. It's like an incentive-laden contract. They're like,
maybe that's what he needs. He needs the fire lit.
Well, they were like, hey, we brought you here to win national title. It's not happening. So, like, your wins have been going down. So is your salary. And then they've just been waiting. Other coaches, like when I brought up the coaches list, Don Brown's not on there. And I know the defensive coordinator is a named position. I just didn't know off the top of my head what it was. Not listed. They never updated it, so we don't know who Harbaugh brought back, because contracts were on Monday. They expired. Who's his coaching staff? Didn't even announce it. So I wouldn't even have been surprised if after he signed that Michigan deal, if we would have got a message like, hey, Jim Harbaugh to the Jets. Like that contract is just so that if Michigan wants to fire him this year, they're able to. They're like, hey, we'll give you 1 more year. Feel free to look around. We want to lock up that recruiting class, and then we'll see what happens. As soon as Harbaugh signed that, suspiciously, Matt Campbell said that he was committed to Iowa State. It was like hours later. I don't know if anyone else saw the connection, but I thought, oh, that's suspicious timing. That he would like wait until after Harbaugh signed. So maybe he is interested in that position. But Ohio State, going to the game with Ryan Day, looking at that job, I don't know how, if you're Ohio State, Ryan Day hadn't, I mean, his next recruiting class, the one he has right now, is supposed to be number 2. That's not finalized yet. I don't know how far it could drop, just based on the weird scholarship numbers they have right now, because players can stay an extra year. but that's his best class. The first one was like in the teens. I don't know what it was, like 19th or something like that. Like it wasn't that good. Then the second year he had the number 5 rated class, and now this year would be the number 2 rated class. So next year is going to be that bump where he has the lower class. Is he able to keep Ohio State operating at a high level, or are we going to see a drop off? And is there truth to the rumors that he's looking to the NFL? Because you wait for the national championship game. Sark, I'm surprised that Saban let him coach, but he did a hell of a job calling that game.
Yes, he did.
And then he came out today and said that he was in support of the Texas fight song that's been controversial. And he said that he wanted to play the other team in Texas. He thinks it would be good for the state, meaning A&M again. So he's hitting all the right notes. Winning a natty with an awesome offense, coming out, getting Texas fans fired up again. Like, they're confident in their program. And I thought, well, this is a bad hire. Like, I thought he was just going to be not doing anything. But he's going through. He was, like, personally thanking all Texas head coaches in high school football, saying that this is their program. And he wants to, like, reach out to them and help them build the state up. I thought that's a smart move. Like, make them feel part of the Longhorn Nation, and then get those recruits filling in. Because I think that's the one thing that Texas hasn't really had since Mac Brown. They haven't had that connection. So I thought that was a great showing for him. And Texas fans today have been really excited, and I can see why. I think they got a couple commits right after the game. I don't know if they're flipping players from Bama or what's going on there, but I mean, Nick Saban had to know that that was going to happen. And he let him coach anyway. Maybe he just doesn't care anymore. Because, I mean, do you think he retires soon?
I don't know. I mean, I think as long as his health is good, I think he'll probably stay.
Holy crap. He's as old as Mac Brown. I thought Mac Brown was like 5 years older. That's why I looked it up. I was like, oh, Mac Brown's still coaching. Wonder how many years he's ahead. That's probably how many more years Nick Saban has. Nope. They're the same age. Man, that has to be nice for him.
No, but I think of my Pap. Like, he still works. He still does. Like, he's technically retired, but he has fun doing what he's doing. It's like Saban at this point probably gets to just do whatever he wants to do, and he'd be bored just sitting at home not winning national championships.
Well, did you see he's bringing people in that are like big time head coaches? He's supposed to be hiring Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. Like, that's just so ridiculous, next level, that you have a guy that was fairly successful in the NFL. I don't want to say he was like awesome in the NFL. He was a hell of a good coach at Penn State. I mean, you could argue that he built up what Franklin had. And that's an argument some Penn State fans don't like to have. But he basically got them through sanctions with an under-talented roster with some big wins there. And then he jumps to the NFL. I mean, he's had injury problems and quarterback problems there. But now you're going to Alabama where you have all these weapons. Like, they might not even drop off at all. So at that point, it's like, what do you even do? Like, that's just such a crazy situation. If they hire Bill O'Brien, I don't know if it's a done deal. I better look it up as we're talking. Because if ever last time we talked about Auburn's thing, and they had already hired someone right before the show.
Well, the ironic thing would be if Gus Malzahn goes to Alabama and just brings his offense with him. That's
too different. Saban likes having like the semi-spread, but it's like a pro style still. Because that's the quarterbacks he was drafting, or recruiting. That guy, their quarterback was in the same class as Tua. Like, he was their backup. Was it Mac Jones?
Yeah.
Like, that was their backup plan for Tua if he didn't come. And so now he's putting both of them in the NFL. From that same 2000, I think it was the 2017 recruiting class. He probably redshirted Mac and then had Tua play. I can't remember how it went down, but that's the one thing. It's like, Alabama, until Saban retires, they're going to be there. And TV ratings, championship game, I know they're not final yet, way down. It was like at 18 million last I saw, and they were still adding in streaming. They said streaming was non-existent. Like they said, like only 200,000 people streamed it, which I streamed it. And normally when you stream a high-level game like that, it lags the whole time. Last year I had to watch it in Spanish, Matt. And I just muted it because I couldn't get the stream to stop freezing. So I know this year the viewership is down. And they don't know why. It's like, we know why. We're seeing the same exact teams and they're blowouts. You're telling me that you can't expand to 16 teams in the playoffs because the games are going to be blowouts. No one's watching. Well, what the hell have you been watching? Most of the playoff games have been blowouts. There's only been a handful of close ones. If you go back and look at them, like they're all blowouts. So you can't tell me that having a 16-team playoff wouldn't be better. Because I hate to say it, and I know it's one of the reasons why they're saying that they're not going to expand, but the injuries would definitely make the later games closer. I mean, look at Ohio State. Sermon was out almost immediately with an injury. And I'm not counting their coronavirus injuries either, because at what point is it the fault of Ryan Day and his staff that your team has had coronavirus issues since October? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that was a joke. I thought they were joking when people were like, because I saw a lot of Ohio State fans' comments where, too bad we weren't at full strength on our defense. So I looked it up. They had 2 guys out, coronavirus. So, and their starting kicker. But at that point, it's like, you guys have been battling this for October. Why? You've shut the whole program down. Like, you were canceling games. And so you only played 6 games because of the coronavirus. At what point did you not isolate your players and get like your program under control? Because it was obvious that they didn't. I mean, you can't have coronavirus issues and be the only program in the playoffs that was having big issues. Like, I'm sorry, Alabama had no problem with it because I guarantee Nick Saban was telling those guys, you're not going out. And Absolutely. He was keeping them safe. Like, there were probably protocols or whatever. So there's only one way, there's only a couple ways you can get it at that level. Either guys are going out, going back with their families, like whatever they're doing, or you don't have the protocols of people coming into the building or whatever else, because then that's going to spread. Like, I know that it's going to be tough to control, but when you're in the playoffs, like, they've shown that the bubbles work. They were there. They almost had to push the game back because of Ohio State. So, and then there was a lot of pressure saying that there was like people calling him out, even Nick Saban's daughter calling him out, saying that they were trying to get Fields healed up. But he looked fine. I was glad that he played. I was worried that he was going to be bad. But he looked good. So there's no excuses from the Ohio State thing. If you're mad about players being out, you need to talk to their leadership and ask them, how could you keep having issues since October? I mean, that was the entire thing the Big Ten said. Like, hey, we're waiting. That was like their line that they put out. Oh, we waited to start later than the other conferences because we wanted a plan so that our teams were able to keep our players safe. And now they're able to be safer on our team. How? How are the players safer if everyone keeps getting it months later? Because that's the line, Matt. They keep saying, oh, excuse me, if you play college sports, you're safer because you're in a bubble and you have health monitors and all this other stuff, and you're at a less chance of getting it because of community spread. Well, apparently not. Not if you play for Ohio State. So I don't understand, because there was a lot of that coming out. Well, they still had their issues.
I think it was probably because Ohio State was like that spoiled kid that always gets their way. The Big Ten was always just catering to them, knowing that that was their ticket to the college football playoffs. So it was like they changed their rules a couple different times to try to accommodate for them. And they didn't have to suffer any consequences for their bad behavior. So it was like, of course, they were going to be like, well, go ahead, NCAA, we have to move this. We're not ready yet. And then through a temper tantrum, when the NCAA was like, no, you're gonna take this ass whipping however you want to.
I think it was, I think the problem was that Penix got injured. because it reminds me there was a season in the 70s where Michigan had the best team in the Big Ten. Their quarterback got injured. I think it was the quarterback. And they ended up tying Ohio State. Michigan should have been selected to go to the Rose Bowl, but because of that injury, they had an athletic department vote. And Ohio State got to go to the Rose Bowl, and because of the injury. And then I think Michigan won again. And it's one of the years where Bo was the coach that I think they should go back through and just claim as a national championship. Because why not? You're saying that your starting quarterback got hurt. Everyone else is claiming championships, even Bama, after they lose to Notre Dame in their bowl game. Like, why not? That's my one thing. I'm going to try to look up the year. But that's what it reminded me of Indiana. And yeah, everyone's going to say, oh, Indiana got toasted by Ole Miss. But yeah, their quarterback was out. I think, and what my argument is, if Indiana didn't have Penix get injured, I don't think the Big Ten would have changed their rules. Like, they played Ohio State good enough, and they were still winning. I think they would have played in the Big Ten championship. I have nothing to back that up, but I think the plan was they were going to let Indiana play Northwestern. Ohio State was going to play Michigan, probably, and then they were going to let the chips fall where they may. Because at that point, you're still going to have a Big Ten champion with one loss, Indiana, which is going to be picked for either a New Year's Six Bowl, because Indiana got passed over for that too. Like, when that injury happened, they got shoved down. And so that's what I'm thinking. Like, the Big Ten basically screwed them, and they felt it because they went ahead and they didn't wear the patches. Remember?
Yeah, they're like, oh, no, we didn't mean anything by that. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, so that's the one where they went ahead and they went out there, they got pulled, and that was it. There's no chance for them, and now everyone's going to say, oh, well, they made the right call. Ohio State beat Clemson. Indiana lost to Ole Miss. Like, it was good. Ohio State deserved to be there. And then, of course, they get beat down. Alabama, I mean, they were that much better than everyone else. But Michigan played that almost exact team last year, Matt, in the Citrus Bowl. And they played them closer than Ohio State did. We can just write that down. They had Najee Harris, Devontae Smith. Mac Jones was their quarterback. Michigan had the lead 16-14 at halftime. I think that was the last time Alabama was down at half, if I'm not mistaken. I know Florida played them tough, but I don't think Florida had the lead. So, I could be wrong, but they had almost all double-digit wins, right? Like, that was a good team. So,
yeah.
I mean, there was no thing for that. That's the one thing that I think in terms of this year and even getting into next year, like Alabama last year with like the LSU, that was kind of a fluke. They had a perfect season. That's the one where I think that you go through and they try to go ahead and get another SEC like team to go up there. And now SEC's talking about how they have all these champs, but I don't think LSU is coming back. Like, I think that's done. I think Alabama's clearly their best team. And if Georgia makes a run, like, I don't think they're going to compete with them. So I think SEC, until Nick Saban retires, they're basically like a one-trick pony now. Auburn's going through stuff. Georgia's at the point where they've had enough time with Kirby Smart. If they would have won it, they would have won it back. I mean, Ryan Day's reaching that point. What I say with my stats, like, you had 4 years to basically win it. He hasn't won it. So what's going to happen? I don't know.
The thing that I found most impressive watching that Alabama game last night was looking at the changes schematically that Saban's made. And you look at a couple years ago when Freeze was still at Ole Miss and Malzahn was just rehired back at Auburn. And one of Saban's big complaints was that these teams were going to using these RPOs and kind of, like, in his words, cheating, because they were finding this, like, gray area with the line blocking, and all he did was just took it, tailored it to his offense, and then just created an absolute monster. And it was actually impressive to watch. Like, not just yeah, you can say, well, they had 5-star this and 5-star that, but it's not like they were playing DeVry last night. Like, Ohio State has some athletes too, and to be able to put on the show that they put on, like, it highlighted their strength and conditioning program. It highlighted, like, top to bottom, they're what other teams that are trying to knock them off need to develop.
And at this point, unless they expand the playoffs, like I've said, I don't think it's going to happen. Because what they need to do is give other teams a chance. Like, Alabama's at such a great level right now that they're in the playoffs. Nick Saban just has to show his handful of rings and say, like, look, this is me. Like, you can come play for me, or you can go play one of these other jokers out there. But I don't know how they're going to push that to the next level, where you're getting guys that are going to think, okay, well, if I come to this school, I might be able to put them over the top. I might be able to be the guy on campus. Like, the only guy that did that was, like, Joe Burrow. And that's one of the ones where it's like, okay, like, where are you going to go from that? Like, what are you going to do? And so you're going to go to Alabama. And I think that they said that, is it 70 or 80% of the college football playoff games have been won by 3 teams? Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama, Matt. That's it. That's why I think, like, Clemson, I'm shocked whenever I looked at the composite ranking that they weren't one of the top teams in terms of talent roster. Like, Dabo hasn't been able to put them over that hump yet. Maybe this year we'll see, because of the coronavirus stuff, what the composite looks like next year. But if he's able to recruit, because last year's class was unbelievable. It was one of the best ever from Clemson. So in a year or two, they're going to be right back in it. It's tough for a team like Florida State or even like NC State or North Carolina, any other team that's going to try to make a run. It's tough for them to beat Clemson whenever they have a second chance in the championship game. So I've been thinking about it. What would be better if they just got rid of the conference championship games? Like, bringing back my example, it was the 1973 season. Alabama claims it as a national championship. They won 11-1. Michigan, let's see if I have the guy's name. They went ahead and they played Ohio State. They were 10-0. They were 10-0. One of the top teams. I think Ohio State, they end up ranked second or something because they tied. But because of Michigan had an injury, Ohio State got the nod in the Rose Bowl. They beat USC, and they finished number 2 behind undefeated Notre Dame. There were actually 4 teams that were undefeated. Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma also had a tie that have all been selected as national champs that year, along with 11-1 Alabama for some reason, because, why not give Bear Bryant another one? So, like I said, just go back through and claim it. Claim it, but that's the same type of bullshit that I felt for Indiana, because that's what it reminded me of. You have a team that was more talented. Everyone knew they were better. It took an injury for the Big Ten to just say, you know what? We're going to have to vote on this. Like, we can't have a team going with an out and injured quarterback. And at that time, the Big Ten only sent one team to a bowl game because, history, Matt. They only played in the Rose Bowl or no game. So they didn't even have a chance. I think that was the year that ended it because there was so much outrage, because I think Michigan dropped all the way to number 6, according to this. That even the vice president of the United States were speaking out against the Big Ten's decision. It doesn't say who the vice president of the thing is. And if I click on this, it just takes me to an article about the vice president of the United States. Like, I would want to know the name. Was it Dennis Franklin? Was he the guy that got hurt? It said he's the quarterback. but I'm not sure. Wikipedia, you would think. Yeah, Dennis Franklin. The Big Ten decided, this is what they said. Dennis Franklin was reported to be a significant factor in the vote of several athletic directors. And so then they got a bunch of public things after. So, I don't know. I feel bad for Indiana. I think Penix should be coming back next year, though. So, if they want revenge, can they put it together? I think most of their team comes back. Can they beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten? That's going to be my preview. We'll see if that can happen. You got anything else for college football?
Yeah. Florida State just taking everyone in the transfer portal. That's how I think you get competitive in a hurry. You wait, you maintain these relationships, and then I think that's honestly, like, all kidding aside, I think that's how you end up winning some of these competitive battles against Clemson and Alabama, because you get these guys that they're sitting there for a year or two. If they don't have a shot, they're recruiting all these other 5-star guys that suddenly you don't have a home. Well, then you just transfer out. And as long as the coaching staff is having good relationships with some of these higher level recruits, you're in a spot now where, like, you actually have a chance to pick up some of these guys.
Well, I'm looking at it now. They don't know if in 2022 it's going to go back to 85 scholarship players. And I don't even know how they're doing the signings this year, because I think you can still stick with your regular signings. But I don't think, like in the past, since Harbaugh has so many transfers, he was able to sign like a 30-person class because of those transfers. With this year, I don't know if he's allowed to do that, because guys can get another year. Like, they just announced that one of the linebackers or cornerbacks, I forget who it was, one of the defensive players that played a big much is coming back for a 6th year. So, like, that will help Florida State too. And that's why I said, I don't know what the rule is. Like, is it only this year might just distance. Like, the transfer stuff might have worked for Florida State in a regular year, but this year you're allowing Clemson to just tell your other guys, like, hey, you lost. They're going to get to keep their 5 stars because they didn't ball out in the playoffs for another year. Like, they're just losing Trevor Lawrence, and they're replacing him with another 5-star.
But I think that could be something that's hurting them, because, like, when you look after Florida State's 13 national championship, it was like, oh, we're just gonna replace our Heisman Trophy winning quarterback with another highly touted recruited guy, since Jimbo's the quarterback whisperer and not miss a beat. And then it was like, oh, disaster. we got Bama.
Well, that's why I said it's the same exact thing. Those are the question marks. That's the question marks for all those teams. Like, Alabama's going to need a new quarterback. I think Mac's going to the NFL. I could be wrong. Ohio State's losing Justin Fields, and Clemson's losing Trevor Lawrence. Unless any of those guys come back, that's going to be your chance. But like I said, until they expand the playoffs, and I don't want a 16 playoff, could you imagine if a healthy Alabama got a bye? Like, what would they need that for? You're telling me, oh, well, Alabama's always going to be ranked number 1 or 2 in most years, so they don't need the bye. Like, you're going to put, then Cincinnati will upset Notre Dame and then get killed by Alabama. Great, you saved me a week. Now I don't even have to watch. Because, like, this year, the play-in games, Matt, the playoff games, had better TV ratings than the national championship. People wanted to see if Clemson would beat Ohio State again. And then that was one that had a higher rating. I think that was the highest rated one of the season, 20-something million.
But, they keep saying about these rankings, why are you playing it on Monday night at almost 9 o'clock?
Because Monday Night Football, Matt. Monday Night Football ended. That's been ESPN's thing, and they're playing it on ESPN. They don't care. ESPN spent a ton of money getting it, and people have been saying, oh, well, it's played on a Monday. That doesn't matter, because the very first one, Oregon and Ohio State, had 35 million people, I think I sent you. Almost double of what this year's got. So it's not the fact that it's on a Monday. People used to watch college football because it was something different. I think, like, the Clemson ones even were getting 25 million because people were like, oh, Clemson's new, I'm going to watch this. And everyone was complaining at that time that, oh, it's the ratings are down because Clemson's in it. We would rather have Alabama and Ohio State. But you're showing the same exact teams. People know how they're playing out. How many years does Alabama have to beat Oklahoma or whatever other team that's going to be in there for people to not watch?
Honestly, this year's different. Like, this year's Alabama team, like, they were head and shoulders above.
Yeah, but Matt, everyone keeps saying about, like, oh, it's different and the coronavirus. People have been home watching more television than ever, and sports are dropping because people don't care. Because it's not compelling. The games take forever. They throw a bunch of other stuff in there that has nothing to do with the game. And then you're sitting there just watching. It's like, why am I watching this? Like, what is the point? And then it's like, oh, well, I know who's going to win. All of these games are blowouts. Every single one was a blowout, right? I think they were all double-digit wins.
Yep.
So it's like, why am I watching this? You can't tell me that this is the best. What would be the best, because I liken it to the NCAA tournament. And I actually have some stuff here because I was going to end on this. So right now, they announced that the national championship tournament is going to be in Indiana. Some teams have been calling out for them to just cancel because of the coronavirus. But I thought, like, why would you cancel it again? Like, wouldn't it be better just to take and even do a college football and just take the top 4 teams in? Because Michigan just beat Wisconsin bad. So they're undefeated, and they're going to be in the top. As long as they keep winning, they're going to be in the top 1. So you have a Big Ten team. You could take Gonzaga. You could take Baylor because they're undefeated in the Big 12, or possibly Texas, and then maybe Villanova. 4 different teams, 4 different conferences, and you could say, all right, college basketball is done. Every other team has a loss, so they're basically out. We're going to go ahead and do this. Villanova has 1 loss. They would get in over Texas because Baylor's in from the Big 12, and same with Kansas. Those are the teams that are below. But no basketball fan would take that. They would say, well, that's bullshit. My team could have beat those teams. That used to be the case in football. Now you don't have that. So it's almost like, all right, if you give them more games, let's see what they are. Get rid of the conference championship games. And then play more of like a traditional schedule. Who cares if Clemson and Florida State don't play in the regular season because of a weird scheduling fluke? What if they met in the playoffs instead? That'd be 100 times better. You're going to play the same teams. Like, if the Big Ten decided, all right, we're going to do a weird schedule where we're going to try to balance it where every year Michigan, Ohio State play, and then where it stands right now, we're going to have Penn State play Nebraska, and hopefully they get back to where they are. And the rest of the schedule is going to flip around. So maybe Ohio State doesn't play Penn State and Michigan doesn't play Penn State a year. And so you might have the winner of that game and the loser potentially get into the playoffs. There's no rematch game. Like right now, the rematch game doesn't help anyone. It hurts teams like Iowa State that could have been in the playoffs, even though they had 2 losses because it's a coronavirus year. They could have been there. But they had no chance because they would have had to beat a more talented Oklahoma team again. And it's not going to happen. And I think that's why Matt Campbell was looking around. That's why it wouldn't even blow my mind if Harbaugh did stay at Michigan. Ryan Day jumps to the NFL. Matt Campbell takes the Ohio State job and wins the national championship. I would just be like, no, that makes so much sense. It's like, oh, thanks, Harbaugh. Screwing us again. Like that would, because that's how it would happen. Like you have a team that's like juggernaut, you get some other guys in. Like Notre Dame has to be beyond frustrated because there's no win-win for them. They're in the spot where they're a big brand name. Like even like we can throw Florida State in there. You know Florida State's going to get a better bowl than NC State any year they have the same record. Or Pitt. Or whatever other team from the ACC. If Florida State has the same record, they're getting the bowl game. It's just like how Michigan played Alabama last year. It's like, why is Michigan even in that game? Michigan had like 3 losses at that time. They're playing a 1 or 2 loss Alabama. Like, this is a bad game. And everyone's like, no, this is a perfect game. Jim Harbaugh, Nick Saban. Like, it's not a big deal. Who knew that Harbaugh would have the lead at halftime and have Nick Saban get his stuff together for an undefeated run the following year? I think he should send Harbaugh a thank you letter. But I'll say, like Notre Dame, there's no upside. They're constantly getting put in bad bowl matchups. And when they make the playoffs, getting killed. At least if they expanded the playoffs, Notre Dame might have been in a better situation. Maybe they're playing a team like Cincinnati that they could beat. And then Brian Kelly says, like, look, we just had a playoff win. Or like, you know how college basketball teams celebrate like the Sweet 16? Because one of the teams, I forget who I was looking at, one of the big basketball schools and like the big program coaches that ESPN always talks about, I forget who it was now. I can't think. But their best season was a Sweet 16. And I thought, that's not even good. Like ESPN's talking about how like this guy is a great coach. His best season is a Sweet 16. It might have been the guy from Maryland. I could be wrong. But then I thought, like, why? That's not even a good season. But that would be like making a 16-team playoff in college football. But at least if you would win a playoff game and you're like, yeah, we were in the Elite Eight, you could use that for recruiting.
But
maybe build off that, fill out your roster, do whatever you need to do. But I think that will fix it.
But I think the one flaw with your bracket situation is that when you look at college basketball, if one guy gets really hot, could single-handedly win a game in a college basketball game. If a quarterback gets hot, like he can't single-handedly win a college football game for. Like it takes so many other variables that like I just don't see. Like and for as much as we were high on Liberty this year, I don't see Liberty going toe to toe with Alabama this year. Like I don't. I just they played competitive and went to overtime with Coastal Carolina, but like both of them would have gotten blown out in the national championship this year.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it. Because it's the first weekend, like you're in December, and instead of having college, because this is my idea, you're saying about like why have it on a Monday? Get rid of that. Have the bowl games end on New Year's Day, because you could even line it up with like D2 and D3, get some exposure, and just have all the national championship games for each level on New Year's. And then have like the college football championship games or here, whatever. And then you could even fill it out because they kind of do like the Armed Forces Bowl or whatever, where you just have the armed teams that if they're not in the playoffs, they get one extra game. Only them. And they also play on New Year's. So like if Army or Navy's in it, then the other one plays the Air Force. Like very simple. Just like one other game to kind of lead into the national championship game. But I think instead of that first December week, that's when you play, all right, there's no conference championship games anymore. You're in the playoffs. There's 8 games that day, just like college basketball, where they have 2 or 3 games going on at the same time. That's what you do, and then you hope that they're both not blowouts. Because like college basketball, a lot of that first round is blowouts. Do people remember those? No. They remember like the one crazy upset out of like 16 games. Or however many games there are. There's more than that probably. I can't even think. There'll be, 32 games? But each day is like 8 or 10 games, like 8 or 16 maybe. I know it's an even number. So if college football had that same day, it wouldn't matter if Alabama's blowing out Liberty, if Cincinnati would have upset Notre Dame. Everyone would have been talking about Brian Kelly, Cincinnati. Oh, could they win the next round? Could they beat Alabama? I mean, I wouldn't reseed it because that's the one thing that like the NFL is doing. Like they're reseeding it to try to keep giving that an advantage. And like if there's a big upset, keep it going. Don't reseed because you don't want to give like an Alabama or a Clemson like a second crack at it. Like, oh yeah, good one, Liberty. You upset Alabama, now you get to play the number 2 team. Like, no, you beat them, now you get to play the number 8 team or whatever it would shake out to be. And then you might have some teams make a run. And like I said, I don't think there would be a bunch of upsets, but the middle teams, like Oklahoma came out and they looked good. And who knows, maybe they would have kept getting hot for that playoff run. Win. And they're hot enough to win the national championship. That's where, like, it might not have to be one player, but if a team in football is executing, look at like when the Steelers won the Super Bowl as a wild card, you can still get hot as a team and make that run. But right now, the way it is, there's no chance of that. There's a huge gap between games, which favors the more talented team and the better coach team. And now you're just kind of giving it a +1, which also favors the more talented team and the team with the most depth, basically. Like Ohio State, I said that they've been recruiting on an almost Alabama level. If you let half your 13 guys get coronavirus or whatever, I think that's what the list was, then yeah, there goes your depth out the window. Like, what are you talking about? So, I don't know. I'm coming around on it. I think I like it more. I was always for keeping the conference championship games, but if they're rematches, let them rematch in the playoffs. I think it would be better for ratings. Because, like, what if, like, remember how Penn State and Ohio State had that big upset that one year where Penn State won the Big Ten? Ohio State got picked for the playoffs. What if Penn State would have had a redemption chance where they could have beat Ohio State again? Like, the ratings would have been through the roof. Because everyone would have been like, Ohio State had a better seed than them. Like, that's a joke. Penn State's gonna be pissed off. They're gonna take it to them. But we don't get that chance anymore. It's like Penn State, you go to the Citrus Bowl and you be happy. There's an SEC team there waiting for you. So that's basically my final bell. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, Raiders signed their defensive coordinator, old Gus Bradley, the journeyman from the Chargers. So Gruden got his guy.
His guy? Do you think that was his number one pick?
I don't know. I'm not John Gruden, but I do know he's going to be prepared for next year because he actually has a defensive coordinator now.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm not super high on them. It just depends on what route they're going to go. Maybe Devonta Smith did break his hand or whatever. He was out of the game. I was waiting to see if the Lions or the Raiders would really try to trade up to take him. Because they were like, what? We can't let that go. A Heisman winner? Remember the last wide receiver to win a Heisman, Matt? He was also a Super Bowl MVP. Desmond Howard.
Huh. I'll be darned.
So you know, John Gruden's like, Al Davis would want me to do this. He'd want me to trade up to the number one pick and draft Devonta Smith. Because that's the rumor now. Did you see that?
No.
They were wondering if they could trade the number one pick for anyone that might want Devonta Smith.
It would be plausible.
They didn't say the line about Desmond Howard, but that is the truth. He did win the Super Bowl MVP with was it the Packers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he ran a punt back.
And the kickoff of the second half, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. You have to look it up. That's like I was like a kid.
I thought you were going to bring up the fact that he'd be the highest ranked, highest drafted receiver since Megatron.
Well, that's why I said the Lions would be in there.
There you go.
But would he? Because who else? I thought there was another high draft pick wide receiver like 2 or 3 a couple years ago that the Raiders took. I could be wrong. I don't know.
But they took Ruggs last year, and he was good before he pulled his hamstring and ruined my fantasy team.
Ruined? What were you aiming for? 4 wins?
Oh, that hurts. when you have 2 of the 5 highest ranked receivers, and you just can't get over the hump, it hurts.
Well, your receivers are getting old. Don't keep receivers. You should have a better strategy than that.
Julio, Hopkins, and Diggs. I thought that was a winning formula. It was not.
Hopkins got traded, and you can't trust the Cardinals.
He was phenomenal this year.
I'd have to look at the stats. I don't remember.
Him and Diggs were the 2. It was Julio that let me down.
He's getting up there. We'll see. Matt Ryan. I know we've gone long. Do you think Matt Stafford goes to the Steelers? I've seen some people talking about that.
I'm going to say big negative.
I think the Steelers are rebuilding, so I don't think so either, but I wouldn't mind that. Hey, Phillip Rivers, he got just as far as Ben this year. Why not give another veteran a chance?
Well, I like they showed the graphic during the Tampa game of Brady being the oldest quarterback now to win a playoff game, and they showed it like, in comparison to George Blanda. I didn't realize that like they were the same age, but like George Blanda looked like he was like 80 years old when he was winning with the Raiders, and Brady looks like he just got done with Botox and like just got out of the tanning bed. Like they use like two of the worst comparable pictures.
Oh, did you see that commercial too about the Raiders head coach that isn't in the Hall of Fame after winning the Super Bowl? Because we talked about that on the show with Gruden getting into the Hall of Fame because he's a Super Bowl champ. And then I found it odd that they were running an ad about pushing another coach in. The one where it's like the picture where they're holding them up.
Yeah.
So
Tom Flores.
Yeah, Flores. So we'll see. Surprisingly, I wonder if he paid for it himself. That'd be funny. Paid for it by Tom Flores, kind of like a political ad. Remember me, Super Bowl champ? There's a picture of me getting held up. It's like I should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. Most coaches that win the Super Bowl are in there. And then it's like paid for by Tom Flores. But that's my last thought. All right. Thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week. Some more playoff talk. College football's over. So focus mainly on the NFL, maybe some other sports as we're getting back into it. But thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.